This is Kylo Ren. You may have heard of him before. He is not a good dude. When we first meet him at the start of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, he's basically a magical space Nazi going around trying to exterminate an entire people and killing anyone who stands in his way. The first time you see him, he's ordering his stormtroopers to fire on a group of innocent villagers. We see him use his force powers to torture information out of people. As a kid, he slaughtered his Jedi classmates. Spoiler, if you still haven't seen these movies 8 years later, he eventually even kills his own father in cold blood. This is Prince Zuko, another villain. You may also have heard of him before, but you probably feel a little bit differently. In the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender, he's a seething mess obsessed with kidnapping a child, the Avatar, to make his tyrant father proud and help him conquer the world. He'll stop at nothing to accomplish his goal, even if it means hurting or killing scores of innocent people in the process, and it frequently does. Eventually, he gives up on capturing the Avatar and just starts trying to kill him, going so far as to hire an assassin to finish the job when he fails. Ren and Zuko are both, by every measure, villains. They're also both villains that, over the course of their journeys, experience a change of heart. Zuko eventually stands up to his father and, far from killing the Avatar, becomes one of his mentors. In the end, Ren turns against his Dark Masters and, in the final act of the trilogy, even gives his life to save the hero. So, why, when I reflect, is it so much easier to think of one of them as a hero and not the other? Why, despite his sacrifice, is Ren still in my mind as this conflicted, but ultimately evil, character? It's a feeling I have toward most villains who do this, the ones who make some kind of dramatic sacrifice near the end of their story. And it's confusing because, that seems like the most you could ever do, right? What more can you give than your life? And yet, here's Zuko, still alive and well at the end of the series, with my mechanical heart in his hands. So, if not a sacrifice, what does it actually take? When do you forgive a villain? One of the best things in life is learning, which is probably why you're here to begin with. Unfortunately, not everyone learns the same. Public school is not a one-size-fits-all option, and a lot of us creative types end up missing out on a lot of precious education. Fortunately, there is a shockingly easy, fun, and highly personalized way to get an education right from home. Learn all your fundamentals, maths, sciences, computer programming, and more with our sponsor, Brilliant. Visit brilliant.org/TaleFoundry to get 30 days for free and 20% off a year subscription. Seriously, this is probably the most fun you'll ever have learning this stuff. Try it out for free and be as brilliant as I know that you can be. I think it helps if you believe the villain can change, if you think there really is some good in them. Seeing them struggle, watching the tension between their inner light and outer darkness, makes the eventual redemption feel earned and true. And, to his credit, you can definitely see this in Ren. I would argue that you can't help but see it. He literally tells us all the time how conflicted he is. We actually get to sit there and watch him monologue, Hamlet style, about his inner turmoil to the twisted remains of Darth Vader's helmet. Darth Vader is his grandfather, by the way, if you're somehow not in the know. It's hammy, it's a little ridiculous, but it's also kind of awesome. We as the audience know what that mask means, so it really is like he's talking more to our expectations than to himself or, the actual ghost of his dead grandpa. But there's also a hollowness to that dynamic, like the writers have an idea of what they have to do to set up the redemption arc for the character. It comes across a bit like checking boxes, like the writers saw a diagram of a character arc and were determined to hit all the labeled points. They are, very adroitly, telling us what to expect from this character. But we don't get to see very much of it. As much as Ren might monologue and stress about the pull of the light, he does fleetingly little about it. The signs he does show are questionable at best. He kills his original Dark Master to save the hero Rey because he's fascinated with her and wants to convert her to the dark side. He chooses not to blow up the ship his own mother is on, even though she's a rebel leader, which is good, but also the least he could possibly do to demonstrate a willingness to change. Right? He didn't kill someone. Yay. There's a lot of build-up to this idea that Kylo Ren is ready to be redeemed, that he's wavering and all he needs is a push in the right direction. We see hints at it, and we hear dialogue about it, and we get all kinds of diegetic cues that this is what we're supposed to believe is happening, even though he doesn't really do much to earn his redemption. That essential part of his arc is just kind of missing altogether. So, when it comes time for his big dramatic sacrifice, I just don't buy it. It's kind of funny that Ren idolizes Vader because Vader went through something very similar. At the end of the original trilogy, he also made a dramatic sacrifice, one of the most famous in film history, and yet, I think you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who doesn't think of Vader iconically as a villain. Vader is conflicted in the original series. We know this because of the ending and the prequels, but we don't see it throughout the original trilogy. His turn to the light basically comes out of nowhere. The only warning we're given is Luke's gut feeling that there's still good in his father, which is completely unsupported by any sort of objective evidence. Sure, he turns out to be right, but if you were a character in that movie, you would think he was nuts. Even the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi thought so. I'm going to set authorial intent aside here for a second. I know Lucas did some stuff in later installments that suggests he wanted Vader to be redeemed by this act. For now, I'm just going to tell you how it made me feel. I felt that rather than a cheap, unearned redemption at the end of the series climax, what Vader got was a sudden depth of character. We got to see all of his inner turmoil crystallize into an action he was never able to take until this very moment, caught between two fires. Not a redemption, but a peek at some tiny smoldering ember inside him that would have wanted to be a different person, were it not so suffocated in hatred and darkness. And the fact that we don't see any of it until right then makes it tragic. It makes me ask, who could Vader have been in another life? This act can't undo all of his evils. He is still a villain, and almost anyone you talk to about it will still refer to him that way. But now knowing the anguish he was harboring silently deep inside of him, it's impossible not to feel sympathy for him, for the darkness he lived in. To me, Lucas's implication that we're just supposed to forgive him for everything in that moment makes it cheap. It rips away my empathy and makes my heart say with a groan, I guess. And a lot of dramatic sacrifice moments are like this for me. A villain has a change of heart, and somehow the author signals to us, after all they've done, just taking a bullet or dropping off a cliff should be enough to absolve them. But with Ren, we did at least see it coming, right? All that dramatic foreshadowing. We just don't see the foreshadowing pay off. We don't see him actually change until the critical moment. He starts to put in real effort and make meaningful decisions around the middle of the story's final installment. But then he just dies. So we never get to see how he actually changed. Ironically, in this case, I think it's actually the dramatic sacrifice itself that prevents us from seeing his redemption. What if, instead of dying right after he begins to change, Ren had to live with his change of heart? What if he had to endure the consequences of it? What if he had to earn his redemption? It's not that hard to imagine. You're probably starting to put the pieces together already. This is why I compared him to Prince Zuko right at the start. Granted, Zuko is a bit younger than Ren, and he doesn't actually murder anyone on screen with his own two hands. He's a little easier to forgive maybe, but otherwise they are strikingly similar. Both deeply conflicted, both with gnarly scars on their faces, of course. They both even have false redemption arcs where they fail to change, even given the opportunity. But unlike Ren, who just gets to do one real heroic thing at the end of his life and be assumed to have changed, Zuko actually has to win that forgiveness. Not just from me, but from the other characters in the show. And given everything he's done so far, it's not easy. I think this is where we find our answer. How does Zuko do it? What does it take? For each of the main characters who are hesitant to trust him, there's a whole episode dedicated to that character's relationship with Zuko. If you count the one where Zuko first shows up, offering to help, that's 4 total. We get time to watch these relationships develop and see demonstrations of the changes in Zuko. It's even lampshaded in the series by one of the characters complaining about not getting to go on a, quote, life-changing field trip with him. These episodes aren't just about Zuko. They also wrap up other personal plotlines. They give depth to the characters who are in the process of forgiving him as well. The fact that the characters are growing together in this way makes Zuko's redemption feel organic, natural, and, most of all, earned. They all get to spend time with the new Zuko. They have a chance to confirm that he really has changed, which means that we do too. An opportunity Kylo Ren and so many other redeemed villains never actually get. Imagine if they had. Imagine if Kylo Ren didn't just die as soon as we got to see the good shining through. I know planning a movie of this scale is hard work, and there are probably a lot of little moving pieces I can't account for here, but I just want to think about this with you. At the end of The Rise of Skywalker, Ren sacrifices himself to bring our hero, Rey, back from the dead. By this point in the movie, it's become clear that he's basically taken up her cause. He spent much of the films trying to sway her to the dark side, and now, just before death, she won him over to the light. Imagine if, in that last dramatic moment, instead, the hero sacrificed herself, and Ren, our conflicted villain, had to take up the mantle of savior of the galaxy all by himself. What would have happened? How would he have coped without Rey there to keep him grounded on the path of good? How would he confront a galaxy full of people who, justifiably, still hate him? Would he waver again? Would he eventually buckle under the weight of his own history and revert back to the path of darkness? Or would he honor Rey's sacrifice and spend the rest of his life atoning for the person he'd been? These questions are never answered. Instead, he dies, and we just have to assume he would have turned out good, even though his history throughout the movies really seems to indicate otherwise. To me, it doesn't really feel like a redemption. It feels like wasted potential. It's easy to take character roles for granted. Both audience members and writers do it all the time. There's a language to it. Blue sword hero, red sword villain. But that's just language. It's one thing to be told what to think of a character. It's another thing entirely to believe it. And villains in particular have to do a lot to earn that. A character whose past is a blank slate can do one good thing and become a hero, or one bad thing and become a villain. But villains aren't blank slates. One noble act, even a dramatic one like dying, can never truly erase all the bad things they've done. It doesn't work that way. We need to feel that they regret what they did. We need to watch them struggle with it. And even then, we still won't have enough to really believe they've changed. So, when do you forgive a villain? Well, I don't really think you do. I don't think it's some decision you come to. I think you just recognize by their actions, by the way that they live as opposed to the way that they used to live, that they simply aren't one anymore. The act of forgiveness is the act of realizing this shift in your own mind. It's the moment you accept that, to you, the old version of them, the villain that once existed, no longer does. It can happen. Really, it's less a matter of how someone dies than of how they lived. How do you live well, though? Not everyone can go on a harrowing journey of self-discovery. Most people need to learn how the world works the hard way, and it is hard. Arguably much harder. Spending years and years sitting in a classroom really just doesn't have the same feel to it as hefting a sword, does it? Well, I may just have a solution for you. Our sponsor, Brilliant.org, can make all of that far more affordable and far more fun than it's ever been before. Brilliant has really been helping me broaden my horizons. I can always go to the site, click into a course, pick up where I left off, and take in a bite-sized piece of the fundamentals I've been missing. Whether it's math, science, physics, anything and everything STEM, Brilliant has something for you. For me, it was Brilliant's Thinking in Code course. I really feel like it just opened up a whole new world to me that I had almost no idea was there before. Slowly but surely, as I educate myself in this way, the AI revolution isn't looking quite so intimidating anymore. And honestly, it doesn't even really feel like studying. A lot of what you do on Brilliant might be better classified as mini-games. Look how interactive and fun these are. This one even has robots. Because Brilliant is so simple, moves at your pace, and starts with the very fundamentals, this is actually something that's really sticking for me, which is saying a lot because I usually just read fiction. It's almost like having a personal tutor or coach, a legitimate, accessible, affordable, easy education, even for someone like me with my head in the clouds. And the best part? You can start for free. Visit brilliant.org/TaleFoundry or click the link in the description to get your first 30 days for free. And if you like what you see and you want to sign up, TaleFoundry fans get 20% off. Just make sure to use our link. Again, visit brilliant.org/TaleFoundry to get your first 30 days for free and 20% off a year subscription. Don't let something as simple as a lack of education hold you back. Try this out for free and be as brilliant as I know you can be. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next week. Bye!